Good evening, grade ones. Thank you very much for joining our class today. So before we start with our lessons as well as the class today, we're going to log into the A Plus Students CA website or the app, and then once you're on the A Plus Students CA page, you're going to log in. Also going to log in with your username as well as your password. All right, so once you've logged in with your username as your password, then we're going to choose the subject of language arts. So you're going to select the subject of language arts, right? All right, so once we've chosen the subject of language arts, we're going to choose grade one. So now in today's lesson, we are going to do the chapter of action verbs. So you're going to scroll down up until you get to action verbs, and we're going to click on action verbs. All right, so our chapter for today or for tonight is action verbs. And the lesson that we're going to be focusing on is complete the sentence with a verb to match the picture. And then we're also going to identify action verbs as well as how to use action verbs, right? All right, so we're going to go into the first lesson for tonight, which is complete the sentence with a verb to match the picture. All right, so before we officially start, if you look at this picture, then is what is this little girl doing, right? Because remember, an action verb is something that someone is doing. So what do you think this person is doing? I can't speak to you now. So what do you think this person is doing? All right, so if you say that she's playing with a ball, then that is correct. Or if you says that she's kicking a ball, then that is also correct, right? So basically, you need to then explain the action of whatever the girl is doing. So it's either she's playing with the ball, or you can say that she's kicking the ball. So if we look at the sentence just under this girl, right? If we look at the sentence, it says Jill the ball, right? So what did Jill do with the ball, right? So what you need to basically say what Jill did with the ball. So you can either say Jill played with the ball, or you can say Jill kicked the ball, right? Anything that basically shows that it is a verb. It shows that it's something that she is doing, right? So if you maybe say that Jill kicked the ball, let me write it. So if you maybe say that Jill kicked the ball, kicked can be an option, right? If we say kicked, that can be one ball, or kick can be one option. Or if we say play, then that can also be an option, because it shows the action and shows that what Jill is doing with the ball, right? All right. So that shows the verb, right? So in our lesson, it says we need to complete the sentence with a verb to match a picture, right? So they didn't necessarily say which verb. At the moment, they're just saying the verb to match the picture. But then later on or further on, we will basically see what the actual verb is. But for now, it is either kick or kicked, as well as play. One of that is the verb. All right, so now we are now going to explain what a verb is, right? So a verb tells you what a person, animal, or thing does, right? It is a doing word. It's something that someone does. You do something, right? And it shows action, right? So a verb, it shows action, right? So that is what the verb does. It shows action, right? So, for example, the cat jumps, right? The cat jumps. What do you think is the verb within that sentence, right? Remember, it says what the person, animal, or thing does. So basically, what did the cat do, right? All right, so if you said the cat jumps, then jumps is correct because that is the action that the cat is doing. So the cat jumps, right? So that is the action. The cat jumps. Now, the next one is we play. We play. So, what are we doing, right? What are we doing? Play. Wonderful. So, play is something that we are doing. So, jumps shows the action that the cat is doing, and play shows the action that we are doing, right? Because remember, a verb tells you what a person, animal, or thing does. It is what they do. It shows action, right? And with action, there's movement also, right? So that is a verb. All right. So if we now look at the first picture that we need to complete the sentence to match the picture. If we look further down, here it says that Jill kicks the ball, right? Jill kicks the ball. So if you say Jill play with the ball, yeah, that's also good. But in this case, especially here where they show these little thingies around the ball, it shows the action or the pressure that what happened over there. So Jill kicks the ball, right? All right. Okay, so now look at the next picture. This is a little man and he is doing something. The man, the apple. What do you think he's doing with the apple? So, what do you think the man is doing with the apple? Remember, it's an action. So, we need to basically say what the action is that the man does, right? With the apple. All right, so if you say the man, oopsie, if you say the man cuts the apple, then that is correct. So we can either say cuts the apple. So if you say the man cut the apple or cuts the apple, or if you say chop the apple or chops the apple, then that is also correct, right? Because it's an action that he's doing. He's either cutting the apple or he's either chopping the apple, right? So either one. So we can either say then cut the apple because he's using a knife, right? So let's rather go with the word cut, right? So we're going to use the word cut, especially since he is also nicely using the knife to show that he is cutting up the apple into small pieces, right? All right. So if we go further down to our solve or our explanation, then that is correct, right? So if you said the man cuts the apple, then that is correct because that is the action that the man is doing. He is cutting the apple or he cuts the apple, right? All right. Look at what this little boy is doing, right? He walked a bike. What is this boy doing, right? So what is this boy doing? We need to look at the picture and then you basically need to say what the boy is doing. All right. So if you say that the boy rides a bike, then wonderful, right? Because over here, this boy is sitting on a bicycle, right? Or a bike for short, right? And he is riding his bike, right? So the boy rides a bike, right? And that shows the action. Because remember, we need to ask ourselves, what is the boy doing? He rides a bike, right? All right, now we're going further. And if we look at the explanation, then that is correct. So if you said the boy rides a bike, then that is correct. So rides is the correct action verb, or let's say it is the correct verb that the boy does, right? So once again, a verb, it tells us what either a person, animal, or thing does. So in this case, this picture that we see over here, he rides a bike, right? Which means that it is a person that is riding a bike. So what does he do, right? He rides a bike, right? Or we can say the cat jumps, shows an animal, or we can refer to something as a thing or something that does something. But anything that shows action, right, that is a verb. All right, look at this picture. The child, the toy. What is the child doing with the toy? What is the child doing with the toy? So you need to basically say what the child is doing with the toy, right? So this is a little boy and he's got a little duck toy. All right. So if you say that the child play with the toy, then that is also correct. Why am I saying it's correct? Because that is the action, right? It's an action verb that shows what the boy or the child is doing, right? So then play is the action verb, or it is a verb. It is something that the little boy or the child is doing, right? Oh, so if we go down, then here it says the child pulls the toy, right? So the string that we see, this little string that we see over here, it indicates that he is pulling the toy, especially that the little duck toy also has little wheels on. So the child pulls the toy. So if you say play with the toy, then that is also correct. However, that is not matching the picture. So, or matching the sentence also. So pulls is the correct word. So the child pulls the toy and not plays the toy, right? Because plays does not even match the sentence, right? So the child pulls the toy. All right, we're going to the next and last one. If you look at what these two, this boy and this girl is doing, right? What do you think they're doing? Brad and Sarah, what are they doing? We see cars and we see little dolls, right? So what do you think they are doing? All right, so if you say maybe that they play, oopsie. So Brad and Sarah play, that is an action verb. What else can do you think we can also, you know, that shows that they are doing something? Brad and Sarah, what are they doing? Right? Okay, so for now we go with Brad and Sarah plays, right? Because they are playing with toys. So now we're going to go and see if that is correct. Yes. So Brad and Sarah play. They are playing with their toys. Wonderful. And once again, this is the same picture that we had earlier on where it says he rides a bike, right? All right. So let's first go to our test to see if we understand or if we will be able to match the pictures or the verb with the correct picture, right? So let's go to our test. All right. So now it says we need to complete the sentence to match the picture, right? Brad and Sarah. By looking at the picture, what is Brad and Sarah doing? Are they play, cry, skip, jump? We need to choose one of these four options that shows what Brad and Sarah is doing. Play, cry, skip, or jump. All right. So if you say Brad and Sarah play, then that is correct. Beautiful. All right, look at the next one. Complete the sentence to match the picture. These two kids are doing something. There's a plane that we see in the sky, right? So Nate and Gabby, what an aeroplane. Do they take an airplane, see an airplane, shout an airplane, or do they touch an airplane? What is Nate and Gabby doing? Do they take an airplane, see an airplane, shout an airplane, or touch an airplane? So, what is Nate and Gabby doing? All right, so I'm going to choose one, right? So, we said they shout, right? And that shows that it is incorrect because the correct word is that they see an airplane and even shows that they are looking up and pointing to the airplane that they see in the sky, right? And this is also how it works. So if you maybe get something incorrect, then it will basically take you back to the tutorial, right, where it will explain that once again, a verb is an action, or it basically shows what a person, animal, or thing does. And here that's showing us again the picture, which is Nate and Gabby see an airplane, right? So remember, whenever you get something incorrect, it will take you back to the tutorial page and then they will firstly give you an explanation as well as to the picture where they showed how they solve it. All right. The girl, what? What is this girl doing, right? We see a tree. She says that we need to be silent, right? And there's somebody walking in the distance. The girl, what? The girl naps, she hides, she sings, or she draws. What is the girl doing? The girl naps, hides, sings, or draws. If she shows that there needs to be silence and there's somebody in the distance, even behind the tree, then it is basically showing that she hides. So if you said she hides, then that is correct, right? So we're only gonna do that three ones, right? And then you are going to complete the rest. And remember, you need to complete the sentences with a verb to match the picture. So all you do is you look at the picture and you basically look at the action or what the person or thing is doing or the animal is doing within the picture, and then you choose the correct answer or the act or the correct verb within the or under the pictures or within the options in order to answer the question. All right, so now let's go back, and now we're going to identify action verbs. So the next lesson we're going to do is to identify action verbs. All right, so we are going to identify action verbs, right? And we said a verb, it tells you what a person, animal, or thing does, right? And remember, we said it shows action, right? What someone is doing. That is a verb. It shows what somebody is doing, it shows action, right? That is a verb. So now it says find the verb the man walks. We need to choose the correct verb within that sentence. What is whoever doing? So the man walks. What is the verb within this sentence? The man walks. So we need to find the verb, right? And remember, we said a verb, it tells you what a person, animal, or thing does, which means that what is the man doing, right? He walks, right? So that is the verb, right? Because now it says that we need to identify the verb. And here it says that the man walks, which means that walks shows what the man is doing, right? My friend kicks the big ball. My friend kicks the big ball. What is my friend doing? Right? So, what is my friend doing? We need to show the action. We need to identify the verb within that sentence, right? So, if we identify the verb, then we will say kicks, right? He kicks the ball or she kicks the big ball, right? So, the verb kicks, and it tells us what the friend does, right? The friend kicks the big ball. He fixes the toy. What is he doing, right? He fixes the toy. So, what is he doing? So, he fixes the toy. What is he doing, right? We need to identify the verb. All right, so he fixes, right? So, fixes is the verb, and it tells us what he is doing, right? He fixes the toy. All right, so we're going to the next one. And remember, we need to now identify the action verbs, right? The balloon pops. The balloon pops. We need to choose the verb within that sentence. The balloon pops. All right, so we must choose the correct verb within that sentence. Then pops is the verb, right? It tells us what the balloon does. So the balloon pops, right? So pops is the verb. Grandma laughs. Grandma laughs. What is grandma doing? So you need to say what grandma is doing. Grandma laughs. All right, so if we choose the verb, then we will say grandma laughs, right? So laughs is the verb and it tells us what grandma does, right? Grandma laughs because laughs is an action, it's something that you are doing, right? So laughs tells us what grandma does. Our teacher reads to us. So our teacher reads to us. We need to find the verb. What is the teacher doing? Remember, a verb is something that someone does or what they're doing or it's an action. So, what is our teacher doing? All right. So, our teacher reads to us, right? Reading is something that she is doing, right? Our teacher reads to us. So, reads is the verb that tells us what our teacher does, right? So, also with identifying action verbs, all right, if you are going to follow on the next page, right? So, here are a few, once again, an action verb, it expresses an action, can either be physical or mental, right? And we said that a verb, if we go back, we said a verb is, it tells us what a person, animal, or thing does, right? So it tells us what the person, animal, or thing does. And a verb can either be physical, right? Or it can be mental, meaning it's like you are not physically doing it, right? But you are thinking it, right? Or doing it in your head or something, right? That shows the mental part, right? But physical is the action that we are doing, right? So here are a few examples, right, that I wrote down, which is climb. So it's either you're climbing a ladder or you are climbing the tree, right? That is one example. And then we also have laugh. So if you are laughing, that is definitely something that you are doing. That is physical, right? It's laughing. Think, right? Remember, we don't think out loud unless you are saying something which is totally different, but think, and that shows mental, right? So think shows mental. Write. If you are writing in your book or writing in a page, writing in your journal, that shows that you are doing something. Ride. Ride a bicycle, ride the skateboard. I think you're riding a skateboard. Ride a horse. That is all examples of action verbs, right? It shows what a person, animal, or thing does, right? An action verb, it expresses an action, something that someone does, and it can be physical, like the things that you're actually doing, or mental, like thinking, right? So now, can you think of more action verbs, right? So can you think of more verbs, right? More verbs. All right, so if we were to think of more verbs, then maybe we can say run is another verb, right? So run is a verb. We also mentioned play as a verb. So we can then say, if we write a sentence about it, we can say, the child play or plays with the toys, right? And that shows the action that they're doing, plays, right? It shows the what they are doing. So plays, it indicates the action, right? All right, let's think of another one. Um, let's go with sing. Remember, sing is also an action verb. It's something that you're doing. So we can say, Jim sings beautifully, right? So Jim sings beautifully, right? So if we were to identify the action verb within that sentence, then we can then say that sings is the action, right? Sings is the action within that sentence. So Jim sings beautifully, right? All right, we're gonna one more sentence. Um, you need to think of a few sentences, right? All right, let's go with listen, right? Because listen or listens, it's also a action verb. So we can either say the children listens to the story, right? So it's either we can say the children listens to the story, or we can say um, Sarah listens to her teacher, right? So that is also how we are able to remember. Firstly, we identify. So in this case, it's listens, right? It's us identifying the action verb, but also writing a sentence or being able to create a sentence with the action verbs, right? Because then it will also show that you do know how to not only identify it, but also how to create a sentence with it, right? All right, so let's go back to our tutorial. So now we have identified the action verbs within our sentences, right, that we also created. So let us go and do a little test. All right, so we need to find the verb, right? So a sentence is given, and then we need to choose and identify the verb within the sentence. So the sentence is the balloon pops. So we need to identify what the verb or what the action verb is within that sentence. Is it the balloon or is it pops? So is it the balloon or is it pops, right? So we need to choose the correct word. So if you say pops, then that is correct, right? Then that is correct. All right, the car stops. The car stops. We need to choose the correct verb. We need to choose the correct verb. All right. So if you say stops, that shows what the car is doing, right? Let's see. Then that is correct. Wonderful. The babies sleep. What are the babies doing? Right? You need to find the verbs. The babies sleep. Let's do this. Oh, so we chose babies, right? And babies is incorrect, right? Which means that sleep that shows us what the baby does, right? So sleeps is actually the correct word. So remember, whenever you get something incorrect, it will take you back to the tutorial, right? And here it will firstly explain what a verb is, tells us what the person, animal, or thing does, and the verb is sleep, right? And it tells us what the babies do, right? All right. So we're going to go back and we're going to the last one. Use action verbs. So now we're going to use the action verbs, and this is now going to be the last one. All right, so here it says if we start with our opening question, He what the dish over to Jill, right? What do you think he did, right? So here we need to use the action verb, right? He what the dish over to Jill, right? And over here it says that he carries, right? Because that is the best answer, right? So carries is the verb and it tells us what he does, right? Because he carries the dish over to Jill, right? All right. Kittens what on the blue rug? What do you think the kittens are doing on the blue rug? We can either say that they play on the blue rug or we can say that they sleep on the blue rug. So we need to choose the correct one. So we can either say the kittens play on the blue rug because that is also a action verb, or we can say the kittens sleep on the blue rug. So we need to choose the correct one. So kittens what on the blue rug? All right, so yeah, it says the best answer is sleep. So if you said sleep, then that is correct. Wonderful, right? Because the kittens, they sleep on the blue rug. Beautiful. All right, let's do the last one. The hen what on her eggs? What do you think the hen does on her eggs? Right? So we can then say the hen sits on her eggs. So remember, they sit on the eggs before it hatches, right? All right, so that is it for the how to use the action verbs, right? So we basically match the different pictures with the verbs. We also showed how we can identify the action verbs and now how to use action verbs by basically you are putting in your own action verbs that matches the correct sentence, right? So lastly, if we go over to a+classes.ca, right? And then you go to learning materials, go to reading, you're going to click on reading, and then you scroll right down, right? Once you get to reading, right down up until you get these 4 purple boxes. And now we go to the third purple box that says read along audiobooks level 1. So click on start. All right, so we're going to choose the first featured book, which is 4th of July, right? And we're specifically choosing 4th of July because today is the 4th of July. So we will say happy 4th of July. All right, so we are going to read along with the the audiobook, which is called The 4th of July by Holly Hartman, right? All right, so we're just going to listen up. All right. All right, so that is the reading on the 4th of July. So even if we go back to the book, let me just return. On the book of the 4th of July, even without reading it, seeing that we are busy with the action verbs, right? If you look at the first, let's look at this one, right? If we look at this picture over here, or what they're saying, you can watch a parade, right? Can you identify the action verb even within the sentence, right? You can watch a parade. What can you do on the 4th of July, right? So, watch, right? So, you can watch a parade, right? Beautiful. Let's go to the next one quickly. Only one. Fly a flag. What can you also do on the 4th of July? So fly a flag, right? So those are all the things that we can do, right? So sometimes also when we are reading a book, right, we will also be able to identify either nouns or verbs, like in this case, action verbs that we are, or the lesson that we were basically doing. All right, so grade ones, that is now the end of our lesson on action verbs, right? So the chapter was action verbs, and we covered the lessons of complete the sentence with verbs to match the pictures, right? So you got a picture and you had to match the correct verb with the pictures, showing what the person, animal, or thing is doing within the pictures. We then also identified the action verbs, and we also showed how to use the action verbs within sentences, right? And remember, action verbs are things that you are doing on a constant basis, right? The fact that I'm talking or teaching or tutoring, that means that I am doing something, right? The fact that you are watching or listening, that is also an action verb. So thank you very much for joining the lesson today. Um, Till next time, have a good evening. Goodbye.